to be asked to moderate this panel on such an important topic. We could not have had a better context set for our deliberations today. Indeed, the topic is on the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, its contribution, the contribution, of economic zones and the challenges and opportunities. And I could not be joined by a more able panel to deliberate on this issue. We have the honor to be joined by distinguished senior experts coming from different fields and institutions, and I will introduce them in a moment to you. But before I do that, let me just say that the session is scheduled for 1 hour. We will do our best to manage the time as effectively as possible, given the calendar. And therefore, I will ask all the speakers to be very brief. We will start with a round of introductions, and then we will go into the debate, which has ably been triggered by the intervention we have just heard from Mr. Ahmed Benes. Indeed, it is a controversial issue at a political level, but what we want to learn today is what is the evidence? What are the experts saying about the inclusion of special economic zones in the African Continental Free Trade Area market? We all know that the scope of the agreement itself is comprehensive. It covers trade in goods, trade in services, investment, intellectual property rights, competition policy, and now lately e-commerce policy, which many advocates are saying that it has become more urgent because indeed we have the COVID-19 pandemic and some of the lessons that we're learning from this crisis. And as many say, crisis also brings opportunity. So I'm looking forward to learning from the experts today on what are their views about how SEZs can be, what they can contribute to the AfCFTA, should they be included? What are the major issues within the agreement itself that support SEZs? And also we have heard from distinguished, especially Zangar from the AfCFTA Secretary, that there is a possibility for regulations, but we want to know what would these regulations potentially contain so that we can emerge at the end of our session with an understanding of what the advice that is coming from this panel and how this might be useful to AEZO as they continue to engage with the policymakers. I'm also reminded that there's also a bigger issue that has been raised, and that is how can the AfCFTA boost FDI attractiveness towards economic zones and expand Africa's productive capacity? Because at the end of the day, I think that the whole purpose of having the African Continental Free Trade Area is to boost industrialization as well as infrastructure development, and indeed sustainable economic development for the benefit of all the people on the continent. So with those introductory remarks, let me turn to the distinguished panel that is going to help us to deliberate on these topics. And I will ask each of them to just give us a very brief introduction and express, what is their view on this topic in very general terms. And then we will come back and have a more detailed discussion about it. So we have Mr. Robert KOOPMAN, who is a Chief Economist and Director of Economic Research and Statistics Division at the World Trade Organization. I want to welcome you. I also want to acknowledge that you may have to leave us before the end of our session. So I will make sure that you have an opportunity to share as much as you can. in the earlier parts of the discussion. I also want to, secondly, to recognize Ms. Dorsaf Zangar Labidi, who is the manager of the Industrial Development Division at the African Development Bank. A warm welcome to you and happy to have you with us today. We have Mr. WILLIE SHUMBA, who is a senior expert and advisor for customs and trade facilitation, working in the AfCFTA support unit and at the African Union Commission. I want to welcome you also to this important discussion. And last but not least, we have Mr. Stefan INAMA, Chief Technical Advisor at the Trade and Customs Division on Africa and LDCs at UNCTAD. I also welcome you and really looking forward to all the comments that each and every one of you will be able to make on this very important topic. So may I turn to you, Mr. KOOPMAN, maybe just to give us your introductory remarks.
Thank you, Ms. MAPHANGA, and my apologies, but I do have to leave in 9 minutes for another webinar. So I'm sorry for the conflict here. So this is a very interesting initiative. When you think about, from an economics perspective, a trade economics perspective, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is all about integration and reducing trade costs, particularly within the continent, which is something that research economists have been focused on for quite some time, trying to reduce the trade costs and increase the integration in Africa. Now, free trade zones actually work to also reduce costs and trade costs, so they can be complementary. And I think that this is something that has to be looked at and carefully examined to see how you can arrange these two trade cost reducing efforts in a synergistic manner. The idea of these free trade zones also is that they bring about agglomeration effects where you have skills, capabilities close by, not just reducing, say, taxes and tariffs and things like that, but to have these economic spillovers from capabilities and perhaps from infrastructure close together to reduce these costs of doing business. We at the WTO have a big project on trade costs where we look at trade costs globally and try to track their evolution over time. We do this by region of the world. We do this by sector of the economy. So we have manufacturing, services, and agriculture. And some of the things you observe is that in the developed world, the trade costs for manufacturing are pretty low compared to, say, agriculture and services, and it goes up in that order. If you think of trade costs for manufacturing at about 100%, agriculture is about 300%, and services are about 800%. That for the developed world. If you then look at, say, the developing world, and particularly Africa, you see that those trade costs are much higher than they are in the developed world. So things like the African Continental Free Trade Agreement and these free trade zones can help to reduce some of these trade costs that we see. It's a multi-pronged effort. Now, the other aspect I'd like to bring into this is more the services and digital aspect. And one of the forces that we observe that have been playing a significant role in reducing trade costs are the digital economy, and particularly also, so the digital economy and the role of services in reducing the costs of manufactured and agricultural goods. So not only do you want to reduce services trade costs, but you also want to make sure that those services are available to reduce the trade costs of both the agricultural sector and the manufacturing sector. On the digital side, one of the things we're observing, and in our recent World Trade Report for 2020, which we just released a couple weeks ago, government policies to promote innovation in the digital age, you'll see that we have data in there on government policies aimed at creating clusters for spillover effects for digital related sectors of the economy and the innovation parts of the economy. And interestingly, we note that in Africa, there's 10 governments that have been proactively bringing about these policy sets to encourage the high-tech sector. Overall, since about 1994, we've seen a dramatic increase globally in governments using government policy to help encourage innovation and high-tech, and particularly digital contributions to economic development. So that's my brief introduction. I think these are important forces. I think there's a lot of research out there that can help inform and help track the success of both the expansion of these free trade zones, as well as the expansion of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And I encourage all the participants to try to look at this research and measure the success of their efforts going forward. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share those insights.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing the insights and also alerting us all to this very important report that has been published. I want to encourage the participants to have a look at it. And I'm really sorry you won't be here for all the discussion.
Sorry also.
I'm sure there may be some questions that arise as we continue. But let me now turn to Mr. WILLIE SHUMBA, who is working on the processes that are facilitating the ongoing negotiations that touch on this important question that was raised by Mr. Ahmed Benes in his intervention just before we started the session. So I'd like you, Mr. Shumba, to please just take us through the understanding of what are the issues and the debates as you understand them, and what has been the work that has been done by the Secretariat in facilitating the aspects that deal with the evidence to support the decision-making process. So please, over to you.
Thank you very much, moderator. I would want to take the conference through the various process that has happened to underscore the importance of special economic zones in the AfCFTA. We are all aware that there is an agreement, the AfCFTA agreement, which was negotiated, and this agreement has got 3 protocols which have been finalized. In the agreement, just starting with the agreement itself, in the agreement, there is a recognition that that there is need. The agreement underscores the importance of industrial development through diversification and regional value chain development. This is the framework agreement itself. It recognizes that fact. And then we now proceed to the protocol. I'll emphasize on the protocol on trade in goods. The negotiations for the protocol on trade in goods again underscored the importance of special economic zones. In his intervention just now, Dr. Mangeni also referred to Article 23, which was a negotiated aspect in the protocol on trade in goods. And the protocol on trade in goods recognizes the importance, and it actually underscores the fact that special economic zones are an important feature of the African free trade agreement. And because of its importance, regulations shall be developed, and also it also underscores that special economic zones are a tool for industrial development. That is the manufacturing sector, the industrialization of the continent, and also the diversification of the manufacturing and the industrial sector. So all these issues show the importance of special economic zones. I'll also proceed to go on to the rules of origin. Of course, there are certain aspects of the rules of origin which are still being negotiated. But even in the rules of origin, there is also recognition of special economic zones. And one of the issues which is yet to be finalized is how the goods manufactured from special economic zones will be treated. But there is a general acceptance that special economic zones are part and parcel of the industrial development of the continent. And in view of that, there is special provision in the rules of origin on how to accommodate the special economic zones. So the African Union has also assisted in making sure that enough groundwork has been done to enable the negotiation, to enable the development of the regulations and also to enable the member states to consider various aspects as they continue their negotiations on rules of origin. The African Union Commission has done some groundwork in order to assist the way forward, and also in order for member states to be well informed as they do their various negotiations on issues pertaining to the special economic zones. I think in summary, this is what I can say about the special economic zones as a very important tool for industrial development and for the development of the continent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving us the insight on where we are in the process, and also the specific instruments that are concerned. And we'll certainly come back to you later on as part of the discussion to understand what are the insights coming out of the research. So I can't wait to come back to that. But in the meantime, I would very much like to just welcome Ms. Dorsaf, Zangar, Labidi, join in the conversation and ask her to introduce herself. And also, we heard the very inspiring statement from the president of the African Development Bank, and we would like to get further insights from yourself in terms of the role that you are playing on industrial development, the nature of the project, and what contributions you think could be made by different stakeholders in strengthening and supporting SEZ development on the continent. Thank you.
Justement, bonjour tout le monde. Alors, pour me présenter, je suis Dorsaf Zangar, la chef de division développement industriel au sein de la Banque africaine de développement. Et justement, je trouve que le choix du thème du panel est extrêmement important et opportun alors que le continent se prépare à l'opérationnalisation de l'accord de zone de libre-échange continentale africaine pour janvier 2021. La création des zones économiques spéciales à travers l'Afrique est très importante pour la mise en œuvre justement réussie de cette zone de libre-échange. Comme vous le savez, de nombreux pays du continent créent des zones économiques spéciales à des fins d'ajout de valeur et d'exportation. Et c'est le nouveau modèle par lequel l'Afrique s'entend s'industrialiser. Cependant, la structure actuelle du marché africain, avec des tarifs très élevés et des barrières non tarifaires, entrave le commerce continental. L'Afrique comprend 54 économies, dont la plupart sont de très petite taille, avec des marchés fragmentés, certaines sont enclavées, tandis que d'autres sont des États insulaires. Et ces caractéristiques posent différents défis pour le développement commercial et la croissance du continent, y compris pour les zones économiques spéciales. Et parmi les raisons qui expliquent le faible commerce intra-africain, je citerai le manque de capacité de production industrielle suffisante, la diversification économique limitée qui entraîne une inadéquation entre l'offre et la demande, des tarifs élevés, des barrières non tarifaires, des infrastructures de transport inefficaces, une logistique commerciale souvent très faible, des procédures douanières lourdes et des risques de sécurité élevés. Et en effet, les zones économiques spéciales peuvent être considérées comme un outil de promotion de l'industrialisation, puisqu'ils peuvent faciliter les investissements dans les infrastructures industrielles. Notre président de la Banque africaine de développement a beaucoup parlé des investissements dans les infrastructures industrielles et ce que la BAD est en train de faire sur ce volet. Ils peuvent aussi attirer et faciliter les investisseurs étrangers, intégrer les entreprises locales dans les chaînes de valeur mondiale, promouvoir une croissance orientée vers l'exportation et bien sûr créer des emplois. Et c'est très important pour le continent africain. Et d'ailleurs, et pour de nombreux pays, ces zones sont un instrument important de développement socio-économique. Ils sont largement déployés pour relancer les secteurs industriels et promouvoir le transfert de technologies et de compétences vers l'économie locale. Et ils peuvent contribuer à améliorer l'environnement général de l'investissement, à réduire les coûts de transaction, à accroître la facilité de faire des affaires et à rationaliser les procédures administratives, y compris le temps nécessaire pour faire une opération. Et selon l'estimation de la CNUSED, il existe actuellement plus de 4800 zones économiques spéciales dans le monde. Elles sont toujours présentes à l'esprit des décideurs en matière d'investissement, ce qui est très important. Voilà, peut-être je vais m'arrêter là pour ma première intervention. Peut-être dans ma seconde intervention, je pourrais parler du soutien de la BAD dans la mise en œuvre des zones économiques spéciales. Merci.
Thank you very much for giving us the context and the importance of positioning our discussion today in the rationale and the importance, why it is that there seems to be consensus that SEZs are an important tool for industrialization. So thank you for your remarks and making that very clear. Now, I would like to turn to Mr. Stefano INAMA, the Chief Technical, as Chief of the Technical Assistance Division of the Trade and Customs Division, of the African LDCs in UNCTAD, and ask you to please just share with us, and introduce yourself and share with us your thoughts on this topic that we're discussing today.
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to discuss and participate in this important panel. I would like to clarify the scope of my intervention, which is on a very, I would say, it's a key issue and very important, has been discussed already during the intervention by my colleague Willie SHUMBA, and also the director Francis Mangheni. Is we have been, as UNCTAD, we have been called by the African Union to assist during the negotiation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, especially on the issue of rules of origin, which is quite technical. And in the context of this technical assistance, we provided studies and research and capacity building activities. One of the issues that we were called to study, and we prepared a publication on that, that is available on the UNCTAD website, is about the treatment of products originating in special economic zones. Let me explain you what it is, because we are talking about a free trade, and basically the Continental Free Trade Area is about moving of goods freely with no custom duties across the continent. However, this free movement with no tariffs is subject to compliance with rules of origin. The goods has to be made in Africa, and so they have to respect certain criteria of value added or other customs requirement to make sure that the products are genuinely manufactured in Africa. The issue is that how to treat the goods that are originating in special economic zones. And the original text of the Annex on Rules of Origin provided, as in many other FTAs, that the goods that are manufactured in the special economic zones, as long as they meet the rules of origin, like any other good in the continent, they can be freely traded in the African Continental Free Trade Area. So they are treated the same as goods originating in other parts outside the special economic zones, like in many free trade area agreements. However, some member states objected to this, saying that the goods that are originating in special economic zones, they benefit from tax holidays, tax breaks, and drawbacks, and tax holidays, and therefore may be undercut the other produce manufactured outside the special economic zone. And this could create unfair trade conditions. And therefore they objected to the fact that these goods could be treated as and could benefit from the free trade under the Continental Free Trade Area. That is the issue at stake that is still to be decided. As ANCTAD, we provided our point of view based on our research, showing that in the majority of free trade areas, the goods originating in special economic zones can be freely traded. And there is also no evidence that including produce originating in special economic zones create unfair trade. And if there is a possibility to have unfair trade, there are trade defense mechanisms in Annex 9, trade remedies in the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, which can be used to remedy to such eventual occasion of unfair trade practices. I just, this is my first intervention. That's the issue that we have been discussing, and I think, that is really important that special economic zone could be included in the African Continental Free Trade Area, since, as has been said by the chairman of AEZO, excluding them will exclude also a sizable share of intra-African trade from the benefits of continental free trade areas. And then I will come back to this later, may create also kind of reverse discrimination, since in many FTAs that Africa signed, especially with European Union, a special economic zone can benefit from free trade. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Just a quick follow-up question to your intervention. Actually, somebody in the chat has asked us to clarify what is unfair trade. You made reference to this. Could you quickly address this question, Stefano?
Yeah, the issue of unfair trade is, in this context, is that the companies, the point of view of some member states is that the companies that are located in special economic zones, they benefit from tax breaks, from drawbacks, so they don't pay taxes, on many respects. They are benefiting from all the investment-related facilities provided in special economic zones. And therefore, they are able to produce their products at a cost that is lower than the cost of comparable industries based not in special economic zones. And then, in their views, create unfair trade, because these industries located in special economic zone are subsidized by the state.
Okay, thank you. I have a question for any of the panelists, actually, but and it's just to understand the experience on the continent. The African Continental Free Trade Area is actually building on the experience that we have had with various agreements taking place at the regional level. I would like you to share with us what has been the treatment of the special economic zones in the current existing agreements, the other FTAs that we have. And also, what has been the experience outside of the continent? I'm looking at ASEAN and other experiences that you may quote. Are we looking here at a debate that is informed by experiences and evidence that has come perhaps from having a dispensation that includes SEZs in an FTA, and then this has now resulted in the detrimental impacts that I think some member states are fearing? So who would like to come in and share some insights on this?
Well, if I may complement, one aspect that we have been highlighting in our study is the fact that many African countries, they signed economic partnership agreement with the European Union. Now, and if you look at the protocol and rules of origin in these agreements, the products manufactured in special economic zones are included, are accepted and benefit from free trade areas and economic partnership agreement. What does this means in reality? It means that factories and firms located in Europe can freely trade to all African states that have signed economic partnership agreement and enjoying them in free trade areas benefits. Conversely, if the African state decide that special economic zones are not benefit from the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, it will mean that the African special economic firms located in special economic zones in Africa will not be able to trade freely with their neighbors. So from an investor point of view, it would be better to be located in Europe, because in Europe, in special economic zone in Europe, because if you are located in a special economic zone in Europe, you can freely export under economic partnership agreement to Africa, to at least to those member states that have signed economic partnership agreements. Conversely, if you are located in Africa, you cannot do that. So it's kind of discrimination, self-inflicted, I would say. And not only for Europe, that the same is applied for AGOA. AGOA will last at least until 2025. But under AGOA, you can be located in Africa and export, even if you are located in a special economic zone in Africa. And because AGOA allows this, or at least is silent about this. But if you introduce a provision saying that the special economic zones, the products originating in Africa special economic zone cannot export to African neighbors, these special economic zones, we only have free access to the United States, but not to their neighbors. Again, is counterintuitive to the overall idea of the Continental Free Trade Area, which is aiming at expanding regional trade. It will work against the concept of regional trade, favoring an export oriented outside the region rather than inside the region.
Thank you. That's a very important insight that you're sharing with us, because I do believe that one of the key objectives of the African Continental Free Trade Area and the work that's being done is to, in fact, promote investments into Africa. So I think what you're sharing is a paradox actually would be created should balance fall in favor of the opinion that says that special economic zones, goods originating from special economic zones should not be in the free trade area. I had asked a question about other regional FTAs. Maybe Mr. Shumba, would you want to comment on your mapping exercise that has been done on the continent? What is the current state of play with existing free trade agreements? Mr. Shumba, are you with us? I think he's not, maybe he has some connection issues. So I think, well, based on that, I just wanted to, because he was going to share with us, I think, some further information and insights, but let us now just go back to Ms. Dorsaf and ask, I wanted to ask you a question regarding the areas where you see potential for investments in specific types of special economic zones that would actually beneficial for the continent. If I may ask you to please come back and mention that point.
Alors, pour répondre un petit peu à votre question, moi, je vais parler de l'expérience de la Banque africaine de développement qui s'est engagée à mobiliser des capitaux, à réduire les risques d'investissement pour le secteur privé et à tirer parti des marchés des capitaux pour industrialiser justement l'Afrique. Et ceci est essentiel pour construire une Afrique, je dirais, du 21e siècle, prête à prendre la place qui lui revient dans les chaînes de valeur mondiale. Et l'Afrique regorge également de potentiel, avec un marché en forte croissance offrant d'énormes opportunités. Puisque nous estimons que les dépenses de consommation y doubleront de 1,4 billion de dollars d'ici 2020 et tripleront à 2,1 billions de dollars en 2025. Et la demande de nourriture dans les zones urbaines triplera à 1 billion de dollars en 2030. C'est pour ça que justement la Banque encourage le développement des zones économiques spéciales. Et je parlerai en premier peut-être des zones spéciales de transformation agro-industrielle. Monsieur le Président de la BAD en a parlé, il a fait un focus sur le secteur agroalimentaire parce que nous avons justement commencé à développer un programme sur ces zones spéciales de transformation agro-industrielle au sein de la Banque. À travers notamment les infrastructures telles que les routes, l'électricité, l'approvisionnement en eau, qui est très important. Et cette initiative des zones spéciales de transformation agro-industrielle est une composante majeure de la stratégie Nourrir l'Afrique de la Banque. Elle a été élaborée en réponse à la nécessité de donner la priorité à la sécurité alimentaire dans le programme de développement de l'Afrique et a été présentée comme un programme à l'échelle du continent pour transformer justement l'agriculture africaine. Ces zones spéciales de transformation agro-industrielle sont des initiatives de développement spatial basées sur l'agro-industrie, conçues pour concentrer les activités de transformation agroalimentaire dans des zones à fort potentiel agricole, pour stimuler la productivité et intégrer la production, la transformation et la commercialisation des produits agricoles. Et ces initiatives peuvent généralement obtenir le statut de zone économique spéciale. Plusieurs zones spéciales de transformation agro-industrielle sont actuellement à divers stades de préparation et de mise en œuvre. 5 projets sont en cours d'exécution, notamment en Éthiopie, il y a 4 sites, en Guinée, au Mali, au Sénégal aussi et au Togo. Et l'investissement direct total de la Banque dans les programmes de ces zones spéciales de transformation agro-industrielle en cours est de plus de 134 millions de dollars, tandis qu'il y a aussi un cofinancement à travers d'autres banques de près de 300 millions de dollars. En 2020 aussi, des projets sont déjà initiés, notamment pour Madagascar et l'Éthiopie, d'une valeur de près de 100 millions de dollars. Ils sont en cours de préparation et normalement seront approuvés au cours de 2020. Et nous sommes en train de aussi préparer plusieurs opérations de zones spéciales de transformation agro-industrielle dans plusieurs autres pays pour 2021. Un autre domaine émergent pour la banque dans le développement de zones spéciales de transformation agro-industrielle, qui est, je pense, très important dans le contexte de dans la zone de libre-échange continentale. C'est l'accent mis sur les zones spéciales de transformation agro-industrielle régionales. Plusieurs zones sont en cours de conception, notamment au Ghana, à Maurice, au Mozambique et en Afrique du Sud, qui sont susceptibles d'avoir une orientation régionale, car justement, ils tirent parti des corridors régionaux existants et des infrastructures internationales telles que les routes, les chemins de fer, les ports maritimes. Par exemple, si je prends l'exemple d'une zone spéciale de transformation agro-industrielle située le long du corridor Pemga-Lichinga au Mozambique, elle est susceptible de soutenir l'exportation de produits vers le Malawi, via Ankala, tandis qu'une autre zone aussi prévue à Maurice devrait se concentrer sur la mobilisation des matières premières agricoles du continent en vertu des protocoles de la zone de libre-échange.
My apologies. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Sorry, Madame Dorsaf, sorry to interrupt you, but I have been advised that we need to summarize. So please summarize and then can conclude. We need to draw this panel discussion to the end because of the time limits. I really apologize for doing so. Yeah, please just summarize your point. Thank you.
Juste pour comme un mot un dernier mot, je dirais, de la fin, c'est que le développement des zones économiques spéciales aussi dans d'autres secteurs, il a déjà commencé dans le cadre de la stratégie d'industrialisation de la banque, et dans certains projets, nous avons initié la préparation du terrain à ces zones, au développement de ces zones économiques spéciales à travers le renforcement des cadres institutionnels et législatifs, la préparation des études de faisabilité et la mise en place d'agences de gestion des zones économiques spéciales. Voilà.
Thank you very much. I really regret to bring the session to what feels a bit like a very quick end, because the discussion is so interesting. I see in the chat there's a lot of engagement that is going on about the issues, and I think what this does is it sends a signal to the organizers, AEZO, that indeed your ongoing platforms for engaging on these topics are in demand and very important. But today, as we draw to the end of this discussion, what I have, the key takeaways I'm having is that there is indeed consensus that SEZs are important, and there are different forms of SEZs, and there has, of course, been a mixed experience with SEZs. And instead of perhaps looking for reasons to exclude SEZs, I think the debate really should be what are the nature of the regulations that should be put in place to discipline the goods that originate from SEZs, and also what kind of investments can we mobilize from different partners. And ADB has given us some examples of investments that are going into SEZs, and Mr. KOOPMAN from WTO also shared about specific types of SEZs and the research that links digital transformation to special economic zones and services. So I want to just all participants who share their experience. We have gathered a lot from this, and I do believe that the important issue here as we conclude is not the technical evidence and discussion, but rather the political discourse, which of course happens in another forum and not here. So I want to thank you for your kind attention and having been part of this panel. I'm going to hand back over to the organizers so that we may continue to see the rest of the very exciting program AEZO has prepared for us. I thank you. and have a good day.